Let's go straight to Kyiv. Gulliver Cragg is our correspondent there. He is, of course, our Ukraine correspondent. Gulliver, good evening to you. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, as everybody knows, I think, has a background in performance as a comedian, as an actor. And clearly what we have there is a showman as a president, but also a real presidential performance at the United Nations. What do you think of his speech?
It was a very sober speech, really. Less emotional, I would say, than some of his other speeches in international context, but very, very serious. It was reasonably muted. He did clearly try to calculate the speech to please Donald Trump, criticizing the UN and other international organizations in general, but saying we need these organizations, we need rules, we need a rules-based international order. He mentioned Charlie Kirk, he mentioned the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, he mentioned as a danger to world security the drug cartels that Donald Trump has been very controversially targeting with these attacks on boats near Venezuela. But he used that as the jumping off point to make what I think was his main argument. And it's a new argument that I haven't heard him put forward in this way before, which is that the current arms race with high-tech drones that can run almost already autonomously, and very soon they will be able to run autonomously using artificial intelligence, that is very dangerous for world peace in general, and that rules are needed to govern how they are used. And as he put it, this crazy arms race needs to be stopped. And the only way Volodymyr Zelenskyy says to stop it is to stop Russia's war against Ukraine, because although Ukraine is leading the way in developing these AI-driven drones, as the president said, we do this because we have no choice, because we have to protect our lives from the Russians who are attacking us. I think it was a speech calculated to appeal to the global south, to people who are far from Europe, but might think that this war in Ukraine poses a threat to them in ways they hadn't perhaps previously imagined, if they're very far from Russia and don't suppose that Russia's got any plans to make incursions into their airspace. I'm thinking about Africa and Asia, of course.
Indeed, and travelling through those countries, you do hear many people being very sympathetic towards Russia's position on a number of issues, probably due to some economic advances being made there by the Russians. Gulliver, there's been attacks, as you're speaking to us, of course, you are there, you know the attacks are happening as they happen. People, I think, who aren't where you are, perhaps take it for granted or maybe think there isn't as much happening as we've been used to reporting on, but it is still going on. The Russian attacks continue. You can tell us more about that, I know. But that line from Zelenskyy sticks out for me, the one about weapons decide who survives. That's very much something that he's been keen on from the very start of this conflict.
Well, I think that they are in a situation where they realize that this is the reality, that if you've got weapons, especially facing somebody like Vladimir Putin, who, as the Ukrainians keep insisting, and I think they're being joined by an ever-growing chorus, only seems to understand the language of force, you do need to have weapons in order to defend yourself. But he's making a nuanced argument here, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He's saying we need weapons and we need your help to get these weapons, but he's also saying the kinds of weapons that are being developed now are a whole different kind of weapon. It's a whole different kind of warfare, and he said it ought to be subject to international debate and regulation in the same way that nuclear weapons are, because they could potentially be just as dangerous, these AI-driven weapons. But while a hot war is raging between one major nuclear-powered superpower and another sizable European country, with other countries getting involved, it's hardly the moment to sit down and say, stop, let's stop the do that, because they afford to, because they need the most high-tech drones they can possibly come up with, and they're coming up with new ones every month in order to hold the line out there in the east, in Donbass, and in the south in Zaporizhia and Kherson regions.
Gulliver, third and final question. This perceived change of position from Donald Trump, saying now he thinks that Ukraine can go on, win, get back the territory, going back to the 1991 borders. How has that been received where you are?
Mixed perception. I'd say more positive than negative, but you get a lot of people saying Donald Trump has proven time and again that he changes his mind all the time. Let's not take him seriously. Those who have been arguing that Ukraine can and should continue to fight and win back all those territories by force feel buoyed that they can now say that they've got the US president agreeing with him. But I think even they are aware that he doesn't have quite the same credibility as previous US presidents, particularly after that rambling speech that he made the same day that he met Zelenskyy in front of the UN General Assembly. And then I think probably the executive, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, well, you certainly didn't see him coming out before the UN General Assembly and saying, look, hey, Donald Trump says we can do it, we're going to go for it. He is still talking about the need for peace now and to sit down and talk about these weapons rather than to keep on fighting for, as Donald Trump said, it would take a very long time. I'm not sure that Volodymyr Zelenskyy is keen on the idea of continuing to fight, or if he's so confident actually that Ukraine could do it. About a year ago today, I think, he said, we're going to have to get some of these territories back by a process of negotiation. And I think that he's hoping that pressure on Russia, a weakening of Russia, means that there will be a long game to be played through negotiations in the future. Ukraine will not recognize having lost sovereignty over those occupied territories, but I think that a lot of people, 60% of Ukrainians still think that they can get them back according to opinion polls, but I think experts and people in the government are a bit less confident of that and think that diplomatic negotiations following a ceasefire might be a better way to go.
Gulliver Cragg, our correspondent in Kyiv, thank you very much for your insights, and do stay safe. Thank you. Gulliver Cragg, our Ukraine correspondent. Let's come back to the studio. Douglas.